Hi everybody, Stephanie Haney here, your digital anchor at 3 News. We've got the afternoon update for you and what we're working on right now. We're going to start with some very exciting news today. Christmas ale is out. It's in the stores. We were at the first pour last week and now you can buy it wherever you're used to buying it. So make sure you hit that up if you're interested in Christmas ale. The other things we're going to be talking about for you today, our Amy Should Be 40 podcast is out. That is the story of the disappearance and the murder of Amy Mahalovic. Drew Horansky covered that for us. That is everywhere you can get your podcast, so make sure you check it out. It's a 5-part series. We're also going to be taking a look at the wildfires out on the West Coast and how that's impacting some people that you definitely know about, like LeBron James, how campaigns are potentially tracking you with yard signs, and some really interesting news for the Catholic community. Pope Francis might be signaling that Catholics might be seeing married priests in their churches and also potentially some female deacons. First up, we're going to start with the wildfires, which are raging on the West Coast. I'm going to drop that link for you in the live stream right now. There are several fires out in California happening right now. We've got the Getty Fire in Southern California and the Kincade Fires up north. The Getty Fire forced LeBron James, Natalie Morales, and Maria Shriver to evacuate from their homes in Southern California. LeBron actually tweeted early this morning that he was driving around looking for a place to take his family because he was forced to evacuate. And that is thanks to the Getty Fire. That started as a brush fire near the Getty Center in Los Angeles. As of now, fire officials say more than 400 acres are burning near the 405 highway, and more than 10,000 buildings, that's including homes and businesses, are in the mandatory evacuation zone. Now that sounds pretty bad, right? But up north, it's even worse. The Kincade Fire is in Sonoma County, that's wine country up in Northern California, and it's going strong, and strong winds are definitely not helping the matter. There are wind gusts of 40 to 50 miles per hour that's fueling that fire. CAL FIRE says over 66,000 acres have already burned, and only 5% of that fire is under control. Now, we told you down in LA there are 10,000 buildings in the mandatory evacuation zone. Well, there are 80,000 buildings in danger, and already at least 96 buildings have been destroyed up north in the Kincade fires. Now, if you were worried about LeBron James at all, just in case you were worried, he did later tweet that he did find a place to take his family, but warned people, said he was praying for the people that were involved in these fires. These fires are no joke, you guys. Make sure that if you are in these mandatory evacuation zones that you are leaving the area, because it is just not worth it. All right, now we're going to bring in Brandon Simmons. He has a story for us that's coming up in the 6 p.m. What Matters Most broadcast. Brandon, what is going on with these campaign yard signs?
So here's the thing. I'm always trying to find new tech stories for you. So this is a different one. The campaign signs, they're actually just installing devices. They're Bluetooth devices that can actually track your location. They're kind of like RFID tags, if you're familiar with those. So based on where you go, let's say, for instance, the Cavs. You go to a Cavs game, you walk through a certain area, you'll get an alert on your phone that says, a great deal on hot dogs here, or whatever. Similar technology can be used in the yard sign itself. So it's installed in there. As you go by, your phone communicates with these things, whether you know it or not. It happened in the 2016 campaign for sure. We know a Republican candidate used it. We don't know which one for sure, but the company who sells the devices said for sure that they sold to a Republican primary candidate. And there's some language that shows that President Trump's campaign is interested, at least in technology, because if you go to their webpage, you can find in the privacy policy that they have actually mentioned specifically Bluetooth beacons and things like that to track your information. So we know it's out there, it's being used, and it's not just by marketers and the Cavs, it's by political candidates as well.
So this Bluetooth beacon, it's on yard signs that people are putting in their yards. Mm-hmm. And we're used to maybe seeing them. We go to an arena or we walk by a shop that's having a hot dog sale or whatever. Mm-hmm. So when we drive by these yard signs?
So you can drive by, you can be walking your dog, anything like that, and you may get a notification on your phone that says, hey, make a donation to this campaign, or it may say something to the effect of go vote today, or something if that's saying go early vote. But it can also pull other information as well, things that your device is willing to share, and sometimes we don't know what that information is. So it's hard for me to say whether or not a candidate is specifically tracking your location from sign to sign or things like that. Those are things that are possible, but again, we don't know how deep it goes because the company who sells the technology doesn't really have to divulge that, and neither does the campaign itself. So the thing we're trying to tell you today is that it's out there, and also how to prevent your data from being captured by these beacons and devices as you walk around. And there are some device updates that came out recently, specifically iOS 13, and Android had an update last year. If you've ever gotten that notification in an app that specifically asked for it to use Bluetooth, this is part of the reason why. They knew that this technology was out there, and these different organizations and political candidates are trying to pull information from your phone. So now they want it to be where you have more control over when that does or does not happen.
So this can potentially track your location, if I'm understanding this right, without actually downloading an app. So we're always worried about our locations being tracked on our phones. So they can do it without even having an app on this?
Right. You weren't forced to have an app before, at least in 2016 when this happened for sure. Android devices had what was called an open beacon format, meaning that any device that could see your Bluetooth, that ping of information back and forth, could pull certain information, whether you gave permission or not. In terms of iOS, it was a little bit more specific. You had to have an app that used beacon technology, but once you downloaded an app, the caveat was you didn't know whether it was pulling information or not. It was allowed to do it in the background. But now both operating systems have fixed that loophole, so to speak, for this year. But again, you have to make sure you update for that to happen, because if you're still one of those who, you're an iOS 12 holdout, or you're still holding on to that old phone, you're still vulnerable to these sorts of tracking activities using beacons.
And is there a way for them to find out personally identifiable information using these beacons?
Again, it depends what information or what apps you're using. If you're using an app that in the terms of service explicitly, has you sign up or something like that, and then it shares that information with the beacon, then yeah, they know it's you. Also, every device has what's known as a MAC address. Every Bluetooth device has a MAC address. And if you're able to link that to a name, then, of course, every time, Stephanie's phone goes by a yard sign or by the concession stand at the queue or whatever location. So it's just important to kind of understand where your data is being used and how it's being used, and more importantly, being able to control when someone has access to it. And I think that's what we're focusing on today.
That is a lot of potentially very valuable information for any campaign, Republican, Democrat, Independent, whatever.
For sure. And while we mention Republicans, I do want to be fair. I bet you Democrats are using this too. I mean, this is a technology everybody's trying to take advantage of, so I'm not trying to signal out any one campaign. It's just more of a story for you to learn how to control your data and make sure it's in the hands of the people you want to have it, and not just floating around in the air just because you're walking around with Bluetooth on.
This is really good information to have. Brandon, thank you so much.
Sure thing.
And we know you'll have more for us in the 6 p.m. show on that.
Of course.
Cool. And we will have that streams, as always, on WKYC.com, and you can watch that over the air on Channel 3. Here's an interesting story. Lindsey Buckingham will have more on this for us in the 6 p.m. broadcast as well. We've got the initial details for you right now. Amazon priests are calling for the faith to allow married men to become priests. Amazon bishops are calling for the faith to allow married men to become priests, and also for females to become deacons. I've also got that link for you, which I'll drop in the live stream. Here's some interesting statistics for you based on the Catholic faith. The priesthood is actually down 30% over the last 50 years. And it's not just in the Amazon where they're making these calls to allow married men to join the priesthood because there is a severe shortage of priests. In the U.S., in 1970, there was one priest for every 1,400 parishioners. Today, there is one priest for every 4,200 parishioners. That is quite the decline. Lindsay talked with people in our community, and we'll hear from them in the 6 p.m. broadcast. And there were some people who were for it. Some were against it. So we'll have to see what they have to say about that later. So what's interesting about this is that Pope Francis actually said that he would reopen the work of a 2016 commission that studied the issue of women becoming deacons to try and help combat this shortage of priests. And he says that he plans to take the Amazon region bishop's overall recommendations and prepare a document of his own by the end of the year, come to some conclusions on that. But he did urge people in the Catholic faith to remain open to new ways to share the faith. So perhaps that's signaling that he may be leaning towards allowing married men and female deacons to become leaders in the faith, but we don't know. We'll find out apparently from him by the end of the year. And as we said at the beginning of the show, our Amy Should Be 40 podcast is now out everywhere where you can listen to podcasts. This follows the story of Amy Mahalovic. She would be 40 this year. She disappeared 30 years ago and her body was later found. You can catch that on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitchers. I'll also drop all of those links in the live stream for you. Tomorrow we'll be talking with Drew Horansky, and he worked alongside Phil Trexler, Susan Moser, and a team here at 3 News in partnership with Tegna's Vault Studios to put this project together for you. It's a 5-part series. You'll learn everything that we know to this date about Amy Mahalovic, and we'll be talking with Drew tomorrow about his process in putting that project together. And we also have a link for you so you can get the full details of that story up on WKYC.com right now. Again, I'll drop that here in the live stream. That's what we're working on for you right now here on 3 News. Make sure you catch our 6 p.m. broadcast on WKYC.com, also streaming in our app and over the air on Channel 3. Thank you for joining us here on Facebook and YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, like this, click the bell, make sure you get the notifications every time we get live, and on Facebook, thank you for following and liking and also participating in the live stream. We appreciate you.